Hello there, dear viewers. This is ABC World, the new voice of Pan-Africanism, coming to you live from Addis Ababa, the capital city. I am Binyam Getana with a special edition of the weekly Viewpoint, only on ABC World. Once again, ABC's English news and current affairs is brought to you by ABC World. I'm joined once again in this edition by my colleague Binyam Alamayo. Please do stay to us. And despite the owning access to the Red Sea throughout its history, before the 1991, Ethiopia was shut off from the sea due to the unfortunate circumstances. These situations deliberately created by an elected government acted against Ethiopia's national interest, protecting national interest, being fair to everyone and involving the decision of the public at large. While that constitutes the first half of our program, the economic disadvantage of remaining landlocked will be discussed with me alongside Binyam Alamayo. And we are going to also explore pertinent issues in connection with how relevant the Ethiopian stand is about, and also having a sea access, to what extent would advance the country for prosperity, integrating the country with the rest of the world, including Africa. And beyond the sea access advantage, we are going to also look at the challenges that landlocked countries are going to encounter whenever they don't have access. And we'll see into down the road how experts, diplomats and ambassadors have testament about Ethiopia's unwavering commitment, and also appreciating the government's commitment in protecting the sovereignty. And also essentially we are going to talk about also the economic advantage and beyond the political circumstances. Once again, this is ABC World. If you'd like to follow us, make sure you can tune on ABC 104.7, the voice of Pan-Africanism, as well as you can text us on our text line 801. You can also find us on our social media platform, www.ebc Radio 104.7, and Zeno FM is another option for you. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, we are going to expound this current affairs unfolding in Ethiopia, in particular focusing on the importance of sea outlets and also what other significance does this point have. Once again, do stay tuned, and then I'll be turning my attention to my colleague Binyam Alamayo. Once again, Binyam, a very warm welcome.
Thank you, Bini. Thank you. I'll be reflecting on a host of issues related to Ethiopia's aggressive coastline issue, and we'll be delving into what needs to be discussed. It's a real pleasure being here with you on this special edition of Viewpoint, where ideas are exchanged and where ideas become clearer, expounded, illuminated, and finally brought to the table.
Definitely, and it's also my pleasure to have you always in this show. And of course, in our prior edition of Viewpoints, we've expounded very interesting issues and quite diplomatically important that actually advances the country's economy in many ways. Not only the diplomatic economic advantage, but politically and geostrategically, how such kind of question is very timely. And then now, speaking to the question that I have, why do you think it's very essential time for us, or it's a high time for us, why we speak up now? And let's try to go over Ethiopia's argument. What do you have on hand?
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. So why Ethiopia is raising this issue at this time is very important and critical. It's been over 30 years since Ethiopia lost its coastline access. In 1993, when Eritrea, which was a part of Ethiopia, seceded following the 1993 overwhelming referendum by Eritreans.
Sure.
And so Ethiopia, the second most populous country in Africa, became landlocked. But to this day, after 3 decades, Ethiopia still remains a landlocked nation. But then this doesn't go well with Ethiopia's current position of being the hub of Africa. Ethiopia seeks to be the first largest economy in Africa come 2036.
Sure.
And as we discussed last time, the second largest economy in Africa
True.
by 2032.
Yeah.
If you want to be that big, then being landlocked is a real and major constraint. So that's why Ethiopia wants to follow up on this issue, an issue which was previously frowned upon, but now thanks to the illuminating and bright speech by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in front of lawmakers about 2 years ago, this issue has just re-emerged. And so how do we catch up on that one? How does Ethiopia advance its strategies and options? That's what I'll be delving into. So despite achievements like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and the energy security, lack of sea access still constrains economic growth and strategic autonomy, because, you know, as a nation which seeks to be the hub of Africa's economy by 2030, Ethiopia needs to ensure that it has a strategic autonomy, and without a coastline, that's impossible.
It is.
So that's why Ethiopia wants to catch up on this issue. Once you know, this issue was very politically sensitive. Like if you raise this issue, you'll be regarded an enemy of the state. So it was frowned upon, something which was a near taboo. But now that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed raised it about 2 years ago, it rose into a prominence to become a central national issue. Now please allow me to cite a very electrifying speech by Chief of Staff of the Ethiopian Armed Forces, Field Marshal Birhanu Jula, when speaking to a large crowd of Ethiopian armed forces on the commemoration of 4th of November. Birhanu Jula was saying that the quest for sea access has re-emerged. The biggest issue here is that it re-emerged because it's of national significance. It's a matter of national security and interest for Ethiopia. And now, although the Ethiopian armed forces are non-aligned and non-partisan when it comes to party politics, since this is a matter of national security and national significance, the armed forces always stands with Ethiopia. The armed forces wants to protect Ethiopia from its internal and external enemies. But how it does this is by ensuring that Ethiopia does not remain, Ethiopia has access to seaports, because it's a matter of national security. National security and national interest is something that we Ethiopians and the armed forces with us need to safeguard. That's what he was saying, and I find this very interesting. That's why I commented on it. Now, when Prime Minister Abiy framed the issue about 2 years ago, he made sure that this is a very developmental and geopolitical issue, and not just historical. You know, true, it's history. We're going to be discussing a lot about what happened, how Ethiopia has historical ground to back its question up, but most of it remains developmental, as is the trend currently. And with a population of 130 million, Ethiopia still remains landlocked, and it's currently depends solely on a single foreign port. That's one of the critical things that need to be considered when talking about this issue. And so during the next few minutes, I'll be expounding on Ethiopia's maritime history, current constraints, the emerging diplomatic strategies, drawing lessons from other countries as well. Now, turning my attention to the historical turning point, you know, until 1993, Ethiopia used to access the port in Eritrea, mainly the Assab port. And going back in history, we find that Ethiopia's maritime routes date back to the Aksumite period, when Ethiopia accessed seaports in the Red Sea, like Adulis and Massawa. And until 1993, it used to access ports in Eritrea, coastlines in Eritrea, mainly Assab, like I told you. But then two developments emerged.
Yeah.
The first is Eritrea's secession, following the 1993 overwhelming vote by Eritreans. But then the transitional government at the time is not a publicly elected government, and we have problems with the process, how things went. But they worked, these processes worked against Ethiopia and what it stood for. So when Eritrea was recognized as a state in the UN, following the request by the Ethiopian government, the transitional government, Eritrea became independent, and Ethiopia ceased to access these ports. Although there was an amicable relationship for about 7 years after the independence of Eritrea.
Sure.
What followed next severely cut Ethiopia from accessing any of the ports in Eritrea. What happened was that there was this 1998-2000 border war, and that effectively prevented Ethiopia from accessing any of the ports and clinging to any remaining glimmer of hope for accessing the ports. It casts a bad shadow, and it spilled the cold water, you can say all that, but Ethiopia since then lost its seaports, and then 90% of Ethiopia's maritime trade was conducted via the port of Djibouti. We're paying billions of dollars annually for this. It's something we cannot afford to continue as a nation which seeks to become the hub of Africa. Now, there is this renewed interest in accessing maritime ports, mainly those in Eritrea or Assab in particular. And what historical ground does Ethiopia have to back this up? That's what I'll be delving into. First, we have the 1884 Hewett Treaty. Hewett follows from William Hewett, who was British envoy to Ethiopia at the time. 1884, remember, this is when Emperor Johannes IV was in power. And so that treaty, which essentially is an Anglo-Egyptian treaty, ensures Ethiopia's sea access via the ports. We're talking about the ports in Eritrea. So this Hewett Treaty ensures Ethiopia the right to access seaports. That's one of the things we can invoke right now, 1884. And then UN Resolution 390. This is 1952. 1952, remember, that was when Eritrea was federated with Ethiopia. There was some kind of arrangement prior to 1952. Emperor Haile Selassie was in power, and he federated Eritrea with Ethiopia. And this is the provision by the UN, allowing Ethiopia, recognizing its access to sea. So we have two grounds so far. Ethiopia now revisits the sea issue, not to invoke the past, but for a brighter future, but for a sustainable future. It's not a reclaim per se. It's more about building a future for Ethiopia. But speaking of historical backgrounds, something to back you up, we have these, as I told you. And so why sea access? Why does it matter for Ethiopia at this point in time? Sea access is essential for economic growth, economic prosperity. Is something I believe you're going to dwell on later in your part of the show. Industrialization and export competitiveness, these are things Ethiopia cannot afford without ensuring its access to a seaport. Without a maritime coast, these things remain next to impossible. If not actually impossible, but that's what we need to do for the time being. And then the expansion of export-oriented industries, those like textiles, leather, and agribusiness, they remain a focal point, and they demand efficient logistics. And efficient logistics is something you can rely on whenever you have a port. Without a coastline, you can forget about efficient logistics, which is something Ethiopia is pushing for at this time. And then Ethiopia's regional energy hub role requires that it needs to have a reliable import routes for equipment and materials. Now that the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has been commissioned, what remains to be seen is Ethiopia growing as an economic and energy hub. As a powerhouse of Africa, we need efficient logistics, and that's something we can only access via coastlines, particularly those in Eritrea. Now, dependence on Djibouti, like I told you, is costing Ethiopia an arm and a leg.
It does.
It costs Ethiopia billions of dollars, year after year. And it's only going to
even on
spike.
a daily basis, if you see it.
Sure. you can see it on a daily basis. It's like we're splashing millions of dollars on a daily basis, thousands of dollars.
I mean, I'm sorry for the interruption, but why the prior government failed to recognize the importance of such a fundamental issue, despite the countries going through lots of bottlenecks? We know the fact that countries who've got, or who are actually not, landlocked, do access lots of privileges. That's why now this has been a critical time for a country like Ethiopia. When Prime Minister Abiy came, this is an daring question, as you've said it yourself, like a taboo. So what does that really show? And then how do you align with the current situation happening in the country?
Okay. Bini, I really appreciate, because you caught me there. It's like you touched a spot.
I see.
In me. Because when I was a young man, several years ago, when this happened in 1993, 1994, I was a 12th grader.
I see.
And I remember that there was, a plethora of magazines. Newspapers, private newspapers. We used to call them the free press.
The free press.
They emerged, they mushroomed, all of them addressing this issue. It was like they were pelting stones toward the transitional government. But then the transitional government only responded either by clamping down on the press or by just giving them a deaf ear. Whatever happened, he was unwilling to entertain the issue. And then I also remember that during the 2005 unforgettable TV live debates prior to the election, this issue was brought forward by some of the opposition parties. Again, the reply was the same. So nothing changed. And it cost Ethiopia a lot.
It does.
So like I said in the beginning, it's like some forces deliberately worked against Ethiopia. Forces and circumstances which were unfavorable to Ethiopia. And now that we raised the issue, now that it's re-emerged, we are forced to re-examine what motivated the Ethiopian government, which I'm sure would have enjoyed the economic benefits of port. But nonetheless regarded the issue as something of archaic, something like being nostalgic to restore the Derg regime to power. That's how they addressed it.
I think that was, I'm sorry for the interrupt, that was the kind of misunderstanding that we need to, clear.
We need to clear the fog in that sense of the manner. Now, heavy reliance on ports, to get back to the issue I started, creates a strategic vulnerability and political or logistical disruptions. These are things Ethiopia cannot afford to entertain anymore, because it wants to be the hub of Africa, the powerhouse of Africa. If you have all these issues, then it's like a foot dragging. You can't afford. And then what international laws are backing landlocked nations, not just Ethiopia. Now we're going to fly over some of these provisions as far as international law is concerned. First, we have the UN clause. UN clause guarantees landlocked nations the right of access and transit through coastal neighbors. It's a very good example
clearly stated,
for Ethiopia, because it has a coastal neighbor, namely Eritrea. But the main provision of this international law is that you have to do this via bilateral ties.
Sure.
So long as you don't have bilateral ties, diplomacy, then
It's
it's
not
as
going to
good
work
as
out.
dead.
Sure.
Doesn't work. Then there's the AIMS 2050. AIMS means Africa's integrated
Integration.
maritime strategy.
Yeah.
The AIMS is a very interesting one in the sense that it represents a shift from landlocked to land-linked nations.
Oh, exactly.
I believe
Linking
is
that,
what-
sure. Exactly. That's a
Now
very
that
good term you've
Ethiopia
used.
has a nation. Ethiopia has a neighbor
Yeah.
with a coastal access.
Access.
Ethiopia can become a land-linked nation. Because, we can discuss how nearer the port of Assab is to Ethiopia
It is.
than it is to Eritrea.
Yeah. Geographically, from the topography point of view.
From Bure,
Yeah.
you can access this. It's nearer to Ethiopia than it is to Eritrea.
Sure.
So we have a coastal neighbor. It's inside Eritrea, but accessing it is more paramount to Ethiopia
Yeah.
because Eritrea is not using it anyways.
Yeah.
That's one of the things you can invoke. But again, like in the case of UNCLOS or UNCLOS, the AIMS 2050 strictly emphasizes cooperation.
It does.
Cooperation between these states is needed, or it's not working. So these provisions, although we have these and other provisions like the Vienna Program of Action between 2014 and 2024, the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda also supports landlocked nations like Ethiopia. UN General Assembly Resolution A/63/17. Again, these are provisions which ensure landlocked nations that they are not going to remain landlocked after all.
And then it's not only
Provided-
with the neighboring countries, but also this
Sure.
time the world is emerging now, and one state. You need to work harder on the multilateral diplomacy. Nations need to get connected with all aspects of diplomacy, politics, and many other significant issues that at the end of the day would benefit all countries together. Because what we see is countries should be self-dependent, and then try to be very sovereign states in terms of food security, military, and many others. But finally, they need to have a sustainable goal that all countries they can share for prosperous world. That's what it's been going on different parts of diplomacy works as well.
Oh yeah, like you said, some of these provisions, pertain to countries who have coastal neighbors.
Yeah.
But even if you don't,
Yes.
you're still entitled to these provisions.
Yes.
Because as the world grows nearer or narrower,
Sure.
and there's global or
Connectivity.
multilateral connectivity, it helps these nations a lot.
Sure.
And that's what I'm delving into. So we have all those provisions, UN ORILS, UNECA, AFCFTA, as you very well know. These emphasize infrastructure, integration, reintegration, and trade facilitation.
Yeah.
So you have all those provisions to back you up as a landlocked nation.
Then you can also add the Africa 2063 agenda, which ultimately helps all African countries to get connected through trade, economic, and diplomacy. So then finally we see the Africa we wanted. And currently several works are being going on by different presidents and ambassadors of respective countries.
The
And
AU,
Ethiopia comes in the class of its own in that
other
regards. Sure.
initiatives as well. UN too.
Exactly.
UN also supports some of these goals. And then, Ethiopia has a window of opportunity. I'm on number 5.
I see.
I'm about to stop for the time being.
Sure.
But there is this regional momentum. What is provided in East Africa that is beneficial to Ethiopia? That's what we call window of opportunity for
Opportunities.
Ethiopia. First, we have the AFCFTA, the African Free Continental Free Trade Area.
Sure.
It aims to cut trade costs by up to 11%.
Sure.
And volumes, freight volumes. That's very important. Freight volume is what's costing Ethiopia an arm and a leg.
It does.
It cuts it by 30%. This is according to UNCTAD. So that's one provision that we need to rely on, AFCFTA. And then Ethiopia's ongoing effort of WTO accession, the World Trade Organization. We need to join, we need to access, and then the BRICS membership. Now all these are supporting Ethiopia, backing Ethiopia up in its efforts to gain access to a coastline. Ethiopia has leverage in this sense. And then port diversification framed as part of the African integration reduces bilateral tensions. Platforms, we have platforms such as the AIMS 2050, something I mentioned previously, the African Maritime Strategy, the Integrated Maritime Strategy 2050. So we have this infrastructural and security cooperation. All these are needed when a country pushes to have access to all the coastlines available.
You really are giving us a very, insightful, starting from the historical phenomena and how Ethiopia is also fundamentally requesting a question that has to be, of course, addressed to the public, the general public. And the question of requesting sea access is a matter of life and death, which has been reaffirmed by not only the Prime Minister, but also by various scholars of our countries and beyond. Remember, with the kind of exclusive interview that Tibor Nash has with Addis Dialogue with our journalist, Shifarrao Laqo, also has said Ethiopia demands this, and I think it's a very high time. And apart from that, there are other diplomats. We can mention, for example, this matter as a crux of a situation for Ethiopia, that Ethiopia by hook or crook needs to have this access. But how? As we have been saying it many times, the Prime Minister stands with a strong affirmation that Ethiopia needs a collaboration, not through war way of doing it. So in this case, Ethiopia's call for access is not actually only political, but it's a historical and economic benefit is so instrumental. And in this case, we can mention Ndale Nguso, who is actually an expert in diplomacy
science
and
expert.
International relations. He actually argues that Ethiopia's loss of this particular sea access not a legal process and an unjust one. And it was also reaffirmed by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed while he was addressing to the parliament members that there was no nullified document that exhibits how Ethiopia lost that particular, sea access, which is a very fundamental point. Apart from that, on this similar issue, Professor Brook Hailu Besha, who's a professor of political science and international relations at Addis Ababa University, also said several ideas while having an interview with Ethiopian news agency, reclaiming that Ethiopia's access to the Red Sea is imperative to several things. One, a very important thing, is to its economics survival. And also he, of course, argues saying that any sort of politics in the Horn does not recognize Ethiopia's right to have access to parts won't be successful. Meaning the country, which is our country, Ethiopia, is one of the very significant countries in the Horn of Africa for its geographical, geopolitical strategies, and having such access plays at the end of the day a very paramount idea. And also, it can strengthen the blue economy empowerment, which is a modern diplomacy, linking the sea access to a sustainable economic growth. So the question is pretty much timely, and if you actually wrap it up, or we bring it to the very narrow context and talk about the context that Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has forwarded, he said with a conversation, time and again, he has been underscoring that framing the access sea not through, as you said, it, through territorial claims, but through regional integration and economic cooperation. So consistently that has been depicted in a clear black and white in the recently book written by Prime Minister Abiy.
Unequivocal manner.
Exactly. So it was stating that we need a shared growth. Ethiopia's approach is not like a one-sided approach, but it's like a shared approach that at the end would help other countries, neighboring countries, including Eritrea. And so speaking of the emergence or the suppressed question, I think it's very much important. As you've been taking me back to your high school time, there were different kind of historical narrations. Even in our high school time, when history teachers were coming, they were telling us how Ethiopia was a very super country back then, and then mentioning
prior to losing.
Exactly, mentioning the ports like Adolis, and how Ethiopia was a super country during the trade routes during that time. But what we see, the current situation, is not something true. I mean, history has not helped us. I mean, I'm not trying to say that it's not important, but what we see is not, if it's not benefiting to the way we want it, if it's not taking us to the development that we want, it remains history. So coming up with this kind of very legit and ethical question shows how the leadership is having a very unwavering commitment. So in this case, we need to wake up. Of course, it is a high time, but why it has been considered as unspeakable, something undaring, something like taboo, as you said it? Because if Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had not came up with this idea, I don't think this issue would be a point of discussion. Of course, they were an attempt, but boldly, with a commitment, with a strategic approach.
It could have remained submerged.
True. So in this case, what was the fear? What was the kind of misunderstanding and hearsays that people were talking about whenever such issues are on the table? One thing, there was actually fear of regional tension. People believe that, or some people, they worry that reopening this kind of topic could strain relationship with neighboring countries. That's not the fact. We are requesting, of course, the Ethiopian government from the very onset is requesting how they can access these sea outlets in a diplomatic manner, recognizing the international law and many other binding agreements. The second was there was a misunderstanding or misinterpretation risk. Some people, the critics of questioning that territorial ambition of Ethiopia, as you've said, is like going back to the Derg region. No, that's not the question. And that is not, it has been told again by Prime Minister and scholars of our country from various political worlds. And the other one was diplomatic prudence, which is other people believe that such matters should be handled quietly through closed-door policy. And this is not going to work out for the context of Ethiopia as we speak, because this is an issue that you need people to know exactly the truth and understand that Ethiopia, how it lost its sea accesses. And I'm asking this, and this time is actually a wise way of addressing the country's need. And the other very fundamental problem that I personally even listen, and also what people talk about on an everyday basis, like lack of awareness. Do we really have, as a citizen, as a professional, well, of course, there are people on different walks of life, economists, political analysts, and many other people on the front line can understand how significant this sea access is for a certain country. And you can compare also countries who are landlocked and countries who are not landlocked. They have a yawning gap economically, politically, and also maintaining their sustainability in terms of the GDP. So here there is a lack of awareness. Clearly speaking, some people, they grasp the economic fear that no, it's not going to be happen. So if you don't have a clear understanding, your information is going to be not balancing. So you rather start to pin the point on other points because you think that this question is not going to be a question that has to be answered.
You start pessimistic.
There is also the status quo comfort, meaning that there is a belief that since Ethiopia has managed to decay without direct access, of course we have lived peacefully. I think we should see beyond our everyday life. We are talking about a national project. We are talking about a great project that at the end of the day transform the country. We don't have to see it politically. So that it's just because Ethiopia has survived without sea access does not mean that we need it. Its advantage outweighs its disadvantage. So it's a high time. If you look at it also, this idea morally, the Prime Minister is something that needs applause, and of course it has been reaffirmed by several experts from here and outside the world. So morally, actually, it represents such kind of question: a nation's right to equitable access to natural resources and the global trade routes, as you've said it. And also for many years, over 120 million Ethiopians have lived without direct maritime access. What does it mean economically? It's so significant. One thing, it limits opportunity for development, and also it reduces your dignity. We've been claiming time and again that Ethiopia is a great nation with history and many other things. But where are we economically? Are we coping with countries who are claimed to say, who have got a bargaining power politically, economically? No, actually. Well, our country is so huge with its historical records, its resources, but having sea access, as it's been requested, could enhance your self-image, your dignity, national sovereignty, and many other points. And ethically as well, it's very much important because according to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on his book, as he was stated in Madember Philosophy, he echoes the ethical vision of cooperation and mutual benefit. So this success would help, as I stated earlier, not only Eritrea, the neighboring countries. For example, the completion of the Grand Renaissance Dam is not only helping Ethiopia, as we've said in a previous discussion of ours, it will go beyond Ethiopia's benefits and then it helps us at the end of the day reconnecting the continents. So politically also, it projects Ethiopia's proactive regional actor and advocating peaceful negotiation. From the onset, as we said, diplomatically, Ethiopia has been going in a very smooth and forward-looking, integration mindset. Economically, we can see sea access is pretty much important because sea access is, as you said it, an economic lifeline. Over 95% of Ethiopia's trade depends on Djibouti, costing the country billions annually. Now, if you see in present or come up with a data that actually back up this one, the country is losing a lot, not only annually but on daily basis. So you don't need to have an economic expert who can possibly talk about this one. It's a time that Ethiopia is asking diplomatically, and from diplomacy point of view also you can talk about Ethiopia's approach, how Ethiopia approached this particular and fundamental question. It is grounded in dialogue and regional independence. So I think it's very much important. So if the Prime Minister had not raised this question, the issue of access might have remained, as you said, it so hard to talk about it. And there are advantages we can talk about. If a country has access to the sea, one thing, as you said, there is going to be high transport and logistic cost. We are going to reduce that one. In the meantime, we are going to reliance on a single trade routes. We will just cut off that one, and then we're going to have a strong connection with the other countries as we transport various kind of import and export activities. And also, it will limit regional bargaining power. Now, despite the resources, despite all the things, unless it is its end product is there as a bargaining power, means economy is one of the bargaining power. So Ethiopia, if its country's economy is not strong, what do you have on the table? Right? So that economy is very fundamental, and one way of strengthening or boosting a certain country's country is...
Sorry to cut you in, Bini, but apart from the economic point of view, which many raise, which is Ethiopia's point of view, and something you can easily share with the world and regional bodies, what about other benefits, like social benefits, psychological benefits, geopolitical benefits? Would you mind shedding some lights on these so that we can...
Yeah, sure. Of course, we could mention, but just to put it in a nutshell, there is a strategic initiatives, as you know, and so Ethiopia is rebuilding a naval force. And we've built this not for drama or not just to claim that Ethiopia is a country with a strong naval base. But in order to actively operate such a naval base, a country demands such important question to be answered in a way that benefits Ethiopia as well as its neighboring country. Because you never know, once there is going to be a certain kind of conflict happens, so you need to use that naval base. Okay? You're not going to send them to go forefront, because this is very fundamental. So you need to be strong in that case, maintaining your naval base strategies. So for that, it's very much important. And the other one is the economic rationale, as I was trying to explain. Having a direct access for a country like Ethiopia with millions of people, but still endeavors to prosper
and
towards
the second most populous
sustainability
in Africa.
It needs economical advancement. So here we should see the country's GDP, right? And we can also compare how people are leading their lives. At the end of the day, it benefits individuals. Everyone will rejoice prosperity once the economy of that country is maintained. And to do that, such advantage will be guaranteed when a country has
access to a coastline.
So it would boost exporters and competitiveness. So these days you need to have that kind of circulation. And it also attracts foreign investment. And Ethiopia would like to export, as we are working hard on wheat productions and many other things. So we need to sell it to the other world. So that happens when a country has that access. Otherwise, if you don't have that opportunity, you are going to optionless. So a country with landlocked nature do not have any option to get connected with others. Of course, we have survived, as I said, but it's a high time. The fundamentality of this question should remain in the minds and hearts of a lot of people. Everyone should wake up affirming the fact that this is our right. This is a time that we Ethiopians have to reclaim the independence, and that we can bring it to the country if we go together with circumstances like this. And security dimension is very important. In this regard,
that goes just
with the naval geopolitics, and also overall having sea access plays a very important role. So Ethiopia's push for direct access isn't about history or sovereignty. It's economy and it's politics and geostrategy. But how does Ethiopia work it out? Through peaceful means, because finally it will help to strengthen security and position Ethiopia as a responsible leader for peace and stability in the Horn of Africa. And it has been surprisingly acclaimed or supported by various scholars in the field of political science, economy, and many other sciences. So having that, I think let us now turn our attention to the concept of submarine, actually, cables. By the way, people, whenever we talk about what we call this sea access, we don't have to only see what is being on the table. There are other importances that we can talk about. Maybe when you talk about these submarine cables, maybe Bini, you can tell us a lot about it. And maybe if you have any idea, for example, sometimes have you ever felt that when there is going to be a network problem, network outage, when the bank networking is not working, okay, when the TV or what have you, there is a kind of failure that we experience on everyday basis. Without realizing how that really happens, people complain and they think that it is tele or big companies are experiencing, flights are cancelled, okay? So why does this happen? From what ground is this kind of problem is happening? And what is actually having sea access would at the end of the day help Ethiopia? So this is a question. So have you noticed or have you wondered why such a thing happened, Bini?
Indeed. Definitely. This is one of the most interesting aspects of guaranteeing access to a coastline. Because for most of us, it's a matter of economics, it's a matter of ensuring your prosperity, your wish or push to become Africa's economic or power hub. But apart from that, there is this interesting aspect of, like you said, other provisions, other benefits, like the submarine cables, which many people do not recognize. When there are power cuts, when there is poor connectivity, when there is zero internet, we mostly blame it on the power provider, the telecom provider,
definitely,
the internet, or the security, or the government as a whole. But what happens is that for landlocked nations, this is one of the things they must ensure. The submarine cables help a lot in this regard, as you're going to elucidate.
Exactly.
And that's why we need to have, this is an additional impetus to drive for a coastline.
Exactly.
Could be in Eritrea, could be anywhere else, but we need to ensure that we have this access. That's how beneficial it's going to be.
Definitely. Bini, you really nailed it. And of course, the answer is exactly yes. Now, this question of submarine cable are so integral because, first of all, let's see the very core idea. I know, despite the fact that several scholars have defined and expounded what it means from economy point of view, engineering point of view, we can see what we mean by submarine cables and how are these actually connected to sea access, and what is Ethiopia trying to convey is a very question that we need to underline. And what is it? Of course, as you've said it in your own words, a submarine cable is an undersea fiber optic, and that carries the internet and telecommunication data across oceans and seas. Can you imagine? We are living in a very digitized world. The world is digitized and transformed through digitalization. And if we don't have a full control of our digital lifeline, it's going to be very hard, because there are various trade activities that are done using digitalization, internet connectivity, and many other things. So what are the very key points that, as an individual, you don't need to be actually a politician or a member of a certain opposition party in order to back up what the Prime Minister says. Just as an Ethiopian, as a scholar, as an elite, as a man who has a foresighted understanding of how the situation will go from bad to worst, I think it's a high time that we need to nip it in the bud and see with a new perspective how such questions are pretty much essential. So one point, very key point that we need to talk about is submarine cables are the backbone of global internet connectivity. These days, you know how powerful connectivity is, and because of connectivity, let alone a country, a huge country like Ethiopia, at the individual level, you can imagine when the mobile banking is not working. Let's say you are in need of money, and then if you are in a very urgent way, if there is no connectivity, you need to look for options. So in this case, this is a very backbone of global internet connectivity, handling over 95% of international data traffic, meaning it's very important not only for this case, but for infrastructure. So the submarine cables are the main highways for global communication. So worlds are globally communicated. There is shipment, logistics, transits that happens when you actually work towards maintaining or gating access for the sea outlook. And the other ones, you can talk about high dependency. Over 95% of international data flow through them. You can imagine once there was such kind of problem that our country experienced it. And when there is notice comes, of course, people wonder how that happened. But usually they don't actually know, or they don't actually go beyond what is happening. You need to sit down and say, why this happened? Okay? It's easy to blame the government or to say that our country's infrastructure is not working well. But the issue is quite different. It needs a scholarly understanding of looking at things beyond what is on the table. And the other one is having such submarine cables are pretty much indispensable for national security implication, meaning that countries without direct access to submarine cables, they depend on neighboring countries for connectivity. That will, at the end of the day, make them vulnerable to external control pressure. Let's say, for example, we use Sudan and others. So once these countries, they just stand and say that, no, what's going to happen? Where is this going to be Ethiopia's stand? How are you going to iron out that kind of misunderstanding that's happening around the corner? So it's very much important. The question is very strategic, and it has got also economic value. So once you control or secure access to the submarine cable is important as the port itself, because it helps you for foreign investment, and countries who do not have this access or this cable, they will rely on neighboring countries, and they make them vulnerable, as I've been saying. So for Ethiopia, for our country, which does not have its own submarine cable, so landing internet tariffs passes through the Djibouti and Sudan. So meaning that accessing can be controlled or restricted. So asking not only the sea outlet, but also such kind of questions are very fundamental, and it is, I personally call it, a make or break time. It's a time that everyone got to support this with many pointers, and I think it's the responsibility of lots of people for economic consequences, national security concern, and also strategic importance. Because at the end of the day, without your own port, submarine cables, Ethiopia's stand would be like a mercy for others, for trade, for internet, and strategic independence. So direct access to the sea would cut costs, as you said it in the very beginning. So it's very much important. So we need to see it beyond the political concept. So Ethiopia needs development, no question about it. So there has been misunderstanding, there has been historical distortion. We have seen it and we have read it. Now we need to walk the talk, as we've been saying it. Now we need to see a fruitful action being implemented. And then what has been going on from the Ethiopian government side is something legal. It's not because I say it here, but it is being acclaimed by many people. Of course, while Ethiopia is progressing toward the sustainability and helping its neighboring country through trade, and with the current advancement that the country is registering through developments, there are pressures that the country is going through internally and externally. So it's like the question of this is like, reminds me a song, when the going get tough, the tough get going. So it's the responsibility of Ethiopians backing up and how we should see what we see at the end of the day. And it's a high time that we need to think outside of the box and see the country that we want to see in a manner that diplomatically benefits the countries that we are having negotiation with.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been following Viewpoint, your weekly gateway to trending topics. We've been delving deeper into the perennial or crucial issue of Ethiopia's quest for a sea access. This is a program coming to you live from the Ethiopian Broadcast Corporation, EBC. You can access this program also through EBC Radio 104.7, your new voice of Pan-Africanism. Our text line 801 is up and running. You can also hit us up on that one. We've also fully gone multi-media too. So there's the YouTube, Facebook. That's also apart from our website, www.ebc.et/English. I'm your host, Biniam Alamayo, bringing this to you live with my colleague and co-host, Biniam Getane. Now, Bini, let me give you a chance to sum this up, but please dwell on two issues in particular. One is growing economy. You know, we've been talking about why this issue has served to make a fuss. For some people, it's reigniting a war. Asking for access to a coastline in Eritrea or elsewhere is going to be costly, particularly from the security point of view. We've lived peacefully, we've grown, we've prospered for over 3 decades, and why now? Why delve into this issue? It's like you're finding yourself in the deepest of muds. Some people argue, but then you know there's the issue of growing economy, growing ambition, more demand. You cannot afford to continue the way you went all over.
Exactly.
For 3 decades. That's one of the things you need to catch up on. And then the submarines, the submarine cables, which you don't have, simply because you're landlocked and not land-linked.
Yeah.
Meaning your security is exposed as you rely on other nations to provide you with this. So these are two of the things I want you to dwell upon while summing it up. We're working this in a nick of time, and we're about to adjourn.
Yeah, sure, Bini. It's definitely like when such issues are politically on table, very fundamentally that you need to take into account the fact that you need to be staunch enough to entertain the two dimensions, because you cannot, I mean, they say you can't take the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink. So it's a high time, whoever echoes, whoever backs, what is on the table is quite different. It is quite important for a country like Ethiopia, who have been away from development due to the distortions and some unwanted diplomacies that was that took place or happened back in then. Now, Ethiopia, if you see currently, the country is progressing toward this development. And this development is not enough. We need to have a very strong development, one of which to strengthen the development and have from landlocked to linking with other countries. Sea or access to sea is very much important. Of course, others' pessimistic opinion might emerge or come from the minds of several people who thinks what the government is doing is quite far from what is really required. But the government, from the onset, even if you've heard what Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said and President Haile Selassie said, they have mentioned historical importance of these things. And they underscored the very indispensable way how Ethiopia can secure this. So it's not because other people have reflected their opinion that the question of Ethiopia would remain unanswered. It is a time, politically, strategically, geographically, and economically, it's a time for us to achieve if we really have to progress. Unless you are there to entertain these differences, you cannot simply waste your time. So for Ethiopia, with a country like millions of history, it is fundamental that we need to bear in mind these pointers. And we need to continuously strengthen our diplomacy and collaboratively secure these essential pointers. And I also believe that it is a time that everyone should support this idea, especially the question when it was raised by the Prime Minister on the very beginning, and I think on September, something like that, correct me if I'm wrong, there were chaos everywhere. People were talking about different things. That's what's expected. When you dare something that has not been tried, such disparities
there
going
are
to come.
trials
It's
and
an idea.
tribulations.
So what matters is your perspective, the way how you see things.
And how determined
Yes,
you are.
how you're determined. See the end in the mind. And then now, coming to this point, what does this generation know? It is a very timely question because this generation should not suffer. This generation needs a time of prosperity, dependency, reclaiming that we Ethiopians are a country for some years have lost this access due to whatever reason. But it's a high time that we have to vividly explain this dimension. And citizens are responsibly, collaborate with the governments. How do they do that? Because we should not, say many more pointers, but it's very important that citizens also should be part of these pointers. Maybe we can continue the other discussion sometime in the next week Viewpoint of program, because we are, I think, as I see, are against time.
This is EBC World, coming to you live from the Ethiopian Broadcasting Corporation. We're situated in the north of Addis Ababa. We're coming to you multimedia. We have EBC Radio 104.7, you know, voice of diversity and renaissance. Our text line 801 is up and running. You can hit us up. You can also access us via YouTube as well as the Facebook page. And Zeno FM is another website via which you can access EBC Radio 104.7. And then there's also the web line or the website, which is also up and running, www.ebc.et/English. This program is coming to you live from Addis Ababa, Africa's diplomatic capital. I'm your host, Biniam Alamayo, along with my colleague and co-host Bini Getana. We stayed here for about an hour, touching upon the most cardinal issue of why Ethiopia wants to access coastline in neighboring Eritrea or elsewhere. Hoping that you've gained something out of this and that you'll be hitting us up on some of the platforms I just mentioned. Until next time, it's bye-bye from us. Thank you.